Hey, and welcome back to another video. This is the 11th episode of the story where there are so many things that we as humans are unaware of, or lack an understanding. The bijou are one of those things. Follow the journey of Naruto Uzumaki as he befriends the yokai that was sealed inside of him and, she, helps him grow stronger. Please support by liking and subscribing. Let's start the show. The return to Konoha took more time than it should have. Of course, when they had started this mission, everyone present was a ninja more than capable of traversing through the trees. Now they had Isaribi. She wasn't a ninja, and while her stamina was above average for a civilian, that was only in the water, meaning she had no stamina on land and couldn't jump through the trees like Naruto, Akane, Haku, and Enko could. Yet they eventually made it home, and as the massive gate of Konoha loomed before them, Naruto, walking alongside Akane, Haku, and Isaribi, stretched his arms above his head. "Man, that was some adventure, huh?" He grinned at the group. "Wasn't it fun?" The blank look Haku gave him was really something else. "You call what happened fun?" "We nearly died several times." "You nearly died several times," Naruto corrected, slinging his hands behind his head. "I was just fine." Akane nodded and smiled so wide that a single fang jutted from her mouth. That type of situation was not nearly deadly enough for Naruto or I to be in mortal danger. "We've faced worse." "Right," Naruto agreed. Haku just sighed. "Cut the chatter, you three," Enko snapped. "We've arrived." Indeed, the massive red gate of Konoha was now right in front of them. The doors were open. They always were around this time to allow travelers like merchants and such entrance into the village. As they walked past the gate, Naruto looked toward the registration booth, a small hut in which two people he didn't know were sitting. There were a few peddlers standing before the booth. Their horse-drawn carts sat off to the side. All people entering and exiting Konoha were required to sign in, which was the village's method of keeping track of who came and went. This was done to help prevent would-be insurgents and spies from entering the village. Of course, it didn't always help. A good spy would have an alias, but Konoha had countermeasures against even that. There was actually an invisible barrier around the village that tracked chakra signatures. The barrier was used to detect when a chakra signature was entering the village, and if the signature was not recognized, they would know that this person was a potential spy. It had been invented by a woman named Mito Uzumaki. "Wait here while I sign us in," Enko instructed them before marching toward the booth. Since there were already several people present, she would have to wait before signing them in. As Enko stood in line and waited for her turn, Haku turned to Isaribi. "You've been awfully quiet. Is everything okay? You're not nervous, are you?" I am a little nervous," Isaribi said. Well. I'm not wearing my bandages, so." It was true that Isaribi no longer wore her bandages. A light blue skirt fluttered about her waist and around her now bare legs, showing that one of them was covered in scales. Likewise, her arms were uncovered, the white shirt that she had donned lacking in sleeves, which meant the scales on her shoulder could also be seen. Perhaps most important of all was the lack of bandages around her face. The reason she didn't have bandages to wear was not because she didn't want to wear them, but because Akane and Naruto had stolen them from her and refused to give them back. Neither of them believed her desire to cover herself was right. They had told her as much. While she probably would have still tried to get them back anyway, Haku had said that he liked how she looked. Isaribi had blushed and quietly decided not to wear the bandages. "Don't worry yourself too much," Akane said, slapping Isaribi on the back with enough strength to make the girl stumble forward. "We have plenty of weird-looking people living in Konoha. There's one clan that lets their bodies become inhabited by bugs." "Bugs?" Isaribi's face took on a disgusted quality. "The Aburame clan, yeah." Naruto nodded. "They aren't bad people, though. Anyway, it looks like Enko is about finished." Everyone looked over at Anko, who signed something and was coming back over to them. The woman looked a bit annoyed. There was a large vein throbbing on her forehead, and when Naruto looked at the pair behind her, he noticed how they were grinning. He'd seen those grins before on lecherous old men. "Problems?" he asked. "Course not." Anko forced herself to grin. "Who the hell do you think you're talking to? I don't have any problems. Certainly not with lecherous bastards who think my clothing means they can insult me." Akane and Naruto looked at each other, wondering if either of them should say something. They decided not to. It wasn't like any of them had a right to talk about someone else's fashion choices. Akane was wearing a skimpy crop top with mesh under armor and a skirt so short her ass would be showing if she bent over. While Naruto's pants might have been long, his sleeveless shirt conformed to the contours of his torso, so nothing was hidden anyway. "Whatever," Anko scoffed at last. "Let's head to the Hokage's tower and deliver our report." "Yes, mistress," Naruto and Akane said. "Shut up." The Hokage Tower wasn't necessarily a tall building, but it was big. Made of 3 round buildings, with 3 stories for each building, it sat before the Hokage monument like a squat, fat, red frog. Akane, Haku, Isaribi, and Naruto followed Anko through the glass door that led into the tower, walked along the marble halls, and made their way to the 3rd floor, where the Hokage's office was located. "Come in," an aging voice called from the inside after Anko knocked several times on the door. Anko opened the door and walked inside. Akane followed her, and Naruto went in next, with Isaribi and Haku taking up the rear. The Hokage was sitting behind his desk, which didn't surprise Naruto. The old man always seemed to be sitting behind his desk. He was looking rather haggard as he signed several papers, though when he looked up and saw who had entered his office, he gave them all a congenial smile and pushed his paperwork aside. "Anko, it's good to see that you and your team have returned." The old man rested his hands on the table. "I'll hear your report now." "Yes, Hokage-sama." Anko stood at attention as she delivered a verbal report on what happened during their mission, telling the old man everything there was to know, including news that Amachi, a man who'd been working for Orochimaru, had been doing experiments on people that he kidnapped from nearby villages. It had been interesting to see the way the Sandaime Hokage's face had paled at the mention of Orochimaru. Orochimaru had been the Sandaime's student at one point. Naruto didn't know everything that had happened, but the man had eventually betrayed the village and left, becoming one of Konoha's ranked missing ninja. "I see." The Sandaime Hokage stroked his chin. "Was there any sign of Orochimaru's presence?" Anko shook her head. "Outside of that woman, Guren, there wasn't. From I could gather, Orochimaru had given up on whatever research was going on there. It seemed more to me like he was using us to do his dirty work and clean up the mess that he left behind." "That does sound like him." The Sandaime sighed, his shoulders slumped, making him look truly old, but it was only for a second before strength returned to the old man's shoulders. He straightened his spine and stared at Anko with a fire in his eyes. "Thank you for informing me of this. I'll send some ANBU to check out what's left of the laboratory. I don't think we'll find anything you haven't already, but you never know." No one said anything. Even Akane and Naruto kept their sarcastic comments to themselves. The Sandaime turned his attention to Isaribi, a grandfatherly smile working its way onto his face. "Now then, seeing how you are new to the village, I suppose we shall have to find a place for you to stay." He looked over at Naruto, a question clear in his eyes, to which Naruto grinned and said, "We'll be happy to house her with us. There's more than enough room." While Haku's perked up, eyes shining with surprise and maybe even joy, Akane's next words turned him into a blushing mess. "Considering her boyfriend is also living with us, it's only natural that we'd let her stay as well." Isaribi and Haku, their eyes bulging like giant eggs, glanced at each other. Their faces slowly colored. Naruto and Akane shared a grin when the two quickly turned away. Neither of them had admitted nor denied being boyfriend and girlfriend. The Sandaime coughed into his hand to gather their attention back onto him. Since it looks like Isaribasan will be taken care of, all of you except Anko are free to leave. What? Why do I have to stay here, while the brats get to go? Asked Anko, her expression suddenly indignant and even petulant, almost childlike. Because I need you to remain here, Herzunin said. Anko looked 10 seconds away from arguing further, but whether it was because he was the Hokage or she saw something in his eyes, she didn't. All she did was sigh and turn to Akane, Naruto, Isaribi, and Haku. She stared at the group with her shoulders slumped. You brats head on back home. Are you sure, mistress? Asked Akane. Anko twitched. You wanna die? Grinning, Naruto and Akane scurried out of the room, pulling Isaribi and Haku behind them. As they shut the door, Anko's fierce glare chased after the pair, causing them to laugh. The ten-tailed wolf Naruto walked with Akane, Haku, and Isaribi down Konoha's Main Street. It was just named Main Street, showing how amazingly adept the people who built this place were at naming things. Truly, such an original naming convention. It was a pretty busy day. There were a lot of people present, from merchants selling their wares to buyers shopping for produce and goods to kids running through the street as they played ninja. While Naruto, Akane, and Haku ignored it, Isaribi took it all in with eyes that were alight with childish curiosity. It's different from what you're used to, isn't it? Asked Naruto. Very different, Isaribi agreed. I'm not used to places normally being so lively. For the longest time, the small port town near Demon Island only knew despair and suffering. It only knew fear. I think it was because I was also there. Perhaps without me, the village would have been like this, but I doubt that would have happened, Akane said. Excuse me? Isaribi looked startled at Akane's blunt statement. If you had not been there, Amachi would have just found some other schmuck to take your place, and then they would have been in the same situation you found yourself in. Akane hummed. Perhaps they wouldn't have possessed your mental fortitude and broke long ago, or maybe they would have broken away from Amachi and gone off on their own. However, none of that happened, and so thinking about what-ifs is a pointless endeavor that only makes you lose confidence in yourself. Air. Isaribi seemed to be at a loss for words, her mouth opening and closing as she tried and failed to speak, though Naruto understood where she was coming from. He decided to be kind and change the subject. How about we give you a tour of Konoha, he offered. Yes, please, said Isaribi. Konoha was a massive village shaped like a circle. Though Naruto thought calling it a village was a misnomer. It was more like a city. He didn't know how big it was, but the place consisted of large residential blocks and various shopping/business districts mixed in with greenery and training grounds. Some sections were nothing but buildings. Other parts were filled with forests and training grounds. Several small rivers flowed through the village, branching off into small canals. While one end of the village was marked by the Hokage monument, the rest was bordered by a massive wall. Naruto and Akane didn't show Isaribi everything. They didn't have that kind of time. Even so, they did show her the important places like the library, the academy, and a couple of shops and restaurants that had their seal of approval. Of course, no tour could be called complete unless it ended with a meal at Ikaraku's. What's up, old man? I am Ekin. How are my two favorite people? His boisterous voice ringing out in the small stand, Naruto sat down on a stool in front of the counter as Ayame and old man Ichiraku spun around in surprise. Their faces lit up when they realized who was shouting. Naruto. Ayame greeted as Akane sat down on Naruto's left. Haku took his right, and Isaribi sat on Haku's right. How are you? You haven't been showing up lately. We almost thought you'd gone and gotten yourself into trouble, old man Ichiraku added. You know me. Naruto thumped his chest and grinned. I'm always getting into trouble. The two laughed. The sound warmed Naruto's heart. "What'll you be having?" asked Ichiraku. "I'll have 4 jumbo shrimp ramens, 2 miso ramens, and 2 chicken ramens." Naruto paused. "And 1 pork cutlet ramen." "Big appetite today, huh?" asked Ayam. "You know it. I gotta make up for not getting my fix while I was on that mission." "And what about you, Akane?" asked Ayam. "I'll have 1 miso ramen," Akane said. "I'll have a shrimp ramen," Haku said when Ayam looked his way. "Madame too," Isaribi added. "I'll have what he's having." If Ayam was surprised by the new girl showing up with Naruto and the others, she didn't show it, jotting down their orders with practiced speed. She tore the slip of paper from the notepad and taped it to the wall in front of her dad. Old man Ichiraku looked at it, nodded, and then got to work. As he began prepping their food, Ayam went back over to them, setting her elbows on the table and leaning over with a smile. Naruto knew that smile. It was the smile of someone looking for gossip. "What sort of mission did you guys go on this time? You really gone for quite a while." "We were just on a mission to protect a couple of vessels from some water demon," Naruto said, absently noticing the way Isaribi flinched. "A water demon? Really?" "Yeah, though it wasn't really a demon," Akane added. "The whole thing was this big misunderstanding that got blown out of proportion." Of course, they couldn't actually tell Ayam any of the details involving their missions. While not confidential, it was bad form to reveal what went on during a mission to anyone save the Hokage. They didn't spend much time at Ikaraku's. Most people would have assumed that it would take Naruto a long time to eat all that ramen, but they would have been wrong. It took him precisely 5 minutes to scarf down everything. Isaribi had been shocked when she looked away for 1 second, then looked back and discovered that Naruto's ramen bowls were cleaned out and neatly stacked. Naruto would never forget the way her eyes bulged. After they finished their meal, Naruto and Akane showed Isaribi to their apartment. The room they gave her was a mostly unmodified one. It was a bit larger on the inside than it looked on the outside thanks to the spatial distortion seals, but it wasn't as esoteric as his and Akane's room. "This will be your place," Naruto said as Isaribi stepped onto the tatami mats. "Feel free to modify it however you wish. If you need to go shopping for decorations, then I'm sure Haku would be more than happy to go with you." "Right, Haku?" "Right," Haku agreed, nodding along. "Thank you," Isaribi mumbled in a stiff voice. Naruto realized from the tears barely contained in her eyes that she was getting emotional. It was probably just now hitting her that she no longer had to live like she did in her previous village. "Feel free to ask us if you need anything in particular," Akane added, patting the girl's shoulder. Isaribi nodded but said nothing. As they walked up to their room, leaving Haku and Isaribi to their own devices, Akane looked at Naruto. "Now that we're no longer on a mission, what do you say we get some strenuous exercise in?" Naruto noticed the way Akane's eyes gleamed as she spoke. It always turned him on to see her crimson eyes glowing. The fanged grin on her face certainly helped charge his chakra. They ascended a set of stairs as he nodded. "Akane, you and I are definitely on the same page." The smile widened. "Right. So. It's time for training/time to fuck," Naruto and Akane said at the same time. They paused. Stopping in the middle of the hallway, the two remained standing as they were for several seconds, with Naruto having thrust a fist into the air and Akane grinning from ear to ear. A second passed. The fist slowly lowered. Akane's grin dimmed. Turning just their heads around, the two looked at each other. "I somehow feel like we're not on the same page here," Akane murmured. "Definitely not," Naruto agreed. "How strange." The ten-tailed wolf Anko stood among a crowd of jonin, frowning as she realized that what the Hokage wanted her for was a lot more serious than she had initially assumed. She recognized all of these ninja, too. They were the Jonin selected by the Hokage to take on a genin team. There was Mato Guy in all his green, spandex-clad glory. Standing beside him was Kakashi Hatake, the copy ninja. Her friend, Kurenai Yui, was there, too, standing to her immediate right, and on Kurenai's left was Asuma, the chain smoker who wanted to get into Kurenai's kimono. They weren't the only ones. Konoha's ninja force was composed mostly of Chunin, but their second most populous rank was Genin. There were about 25,000 Genin serving Konoha, give or take, which meant that in this room, not large enough to be called a stadium, but more than large enough to fit around 4,000 people comfortably, there were probably around 8,000 Jonin. Any idea what's going on? Enko asked Kurenai as Kakashi flipped through another page of his book, giggled, and then flipped again. Kurenai's right eye twitched, but she answered Enko's question. No idea. How about you, chain smoker? Enko asked. I resent being called that. Asuma took a deep inhale of his cigarette. I have no idea what they called all of us out here for either, but I'm sure we'll find out soon. Enko couldn't suppress her wonder. She looked up front, to where the Hokage stood with 3 people behind him. Her boss, Ibiki Marino, was quite easy to recognize with his scarred face and black trench coat. She also recognized the man and woman beside him. One of them was ANBU member Yugao Yuzuki, who she only recognized by her purple hair. The other was Geku Hei-8, a special jonin like her who had a talent for sword fighting. She'd heard a rumor that the two were lovers, though she didn't know if that was true. Finally, after several minutes of letting the jonin talk amongst themselves, the Hokage spoke up. Thank you all for coming on such short notice, he began. I'm sure some of you have already figured out what this meeting is for, but those of you who haven't, I'll tell you. The old Hokage took a quick puff of his pipe, blew out several rings, and continued. Originally, Konoha was going to be the village that hosted this year's Chunin selection exams. The Chunin exams were an opportunity for Genin to be promoted to Chunin. They were the place where Genin showed their talent, but there were also political and business reasons for hosting the Chunin exams. One was to showcase the talent of promising Genin to potential clients. It was like saying, look at how powerful our weakest rank of ninja are, and imagine how much more powerful our strongest is. The other was to showcase the power of the village itself. Is that no longer the case? Asked Kurenai. Indeed, that is no longer the case, the Sandaime said. Kirigakure has recently recovered from their civil war and made a deal with Konoha to co-host the Chunin exams. In return for allowing them to host the exams in Kirigakure, we're being given several unique privileges and jutsu that were previously unknown to us. The words created a stirring among the jonin. Enko shared in their shock. A hidden village's jutsu was one of their most closely guarded secrets. Giving another hidden village jutsu known only by that village was akin to putting yourself under the chopping block, to bare your neck before a poised katana, a katana that you gave to your enemy. The hidden villages were not allies by any stretch of the imagination. Even Konoha's alliance with Suna was one of convenience, not friendship, and it could be broken at any time, should one village or the other decide that breaking ties would be more beneficial. This was a world in which alliances could change at the drop of a kunai. Several of those jutsu are ranked and known only to Kirigakure, the Sandaime continued. They even presented us with several of these ninjutsu up front, and we have verified that they are authentic. Jutsu not previously known to us. Not even Kakashi knows these jutsu. Everyone looked at Kakashi who, upon realizing that he had become the center of attention, lifted his head to smile and wave at everyone. Because they have seen fit to give us this show of trust, we have decided to let them host the exams. 1 month from now, the Chunin selection exams will take place in Kirigakure, which is why I have called you all here today. It's time to select which genin among your squad shall participate. Another ripple passed through the jonin. Whispers broke out, though they were neither loud nor intrusive. Enko couldn't even hear what they were saying. Of course, she had bigger issues to think about. The Chunin selection exams were surely something that Naruto and Akane would want to participate in. Regardless of her thoughts on their conduct, the two were impossibly way stronger than any jonin she knew save for maybe Kakashi. Well, Akane was definitely stronger than Kakashi, being the Kyuubi in all. And Naruto was no slouch either. If anyone could show the world Konoha's power, it would be those two. Because we'll be traveling by land and sea, we have a limited number of slots, the Sandaime began again. That being the case, if any of you feel like your genin deserve a chance to participate in this year's exam, please be sure to step forward. As the shock from the most recent announcement wore off, the excitement picked up, with numerous jonin talking about how they were going to have their genin participate. Not all of them were so enthused, though. Anko noticed a large number of jonin who said nothing. Whether that was because they didn't think their kids were ready, or because they didn't want to seem eager, she couldn't tell. "What do you think?" asked Kurenai. Asuma blew smoke from his mouth. "I think this could be a unique opportunity." Kirigakure, huh? "I'm not sure my brats are ready for that, but maybe. I'm worried about my students." Kurenai bit her lip. "The only one among them who I think is truly ready is Shino. Kiba is too reckless and Hinata lacks confidence in herself. That said, the Chunin exams will be a good way to see how they measure up," Asuma finished. Kurenai nodded. "Though it could also kill them." Chuckling, Anko said, "I don't know about you two, but my kids are definitely going to take part in those exams." Kurenai and Asuma looked at her. Even Kakashi had turned an ear in their direction, though he tried hard to pretend he wasn't listening. "You have that much confidence in your students, do you?" asked Asuma. "Of course I do." Anko's chest swelled with false pride. "Naruto and Akane are in a class of their own, and Haku's no slouch either. The brats have some serious talent. It would be a shame if they couldn't showcase it." Anko had the distinct feeling that neither Naruto or Akane much cared about going up in rank. They never expressed interest in much of anything except each other. But not only were they more than qualified to be Chunin, making them take this test would be a small measure of revenge on them for constantly teasing her. "Are you sure that's wise?" asked Madogai. "I understand why you might be eager to let your genin take the test, but sometimes it's better to wait. I didn't let my cute students take the test last year because I wanted to give them more experience. Don't put my genin in the same level," Anko said. "Akane and Naruto have already more than proven themselves, and Haku worked under Zabuza, so I already know that he's got enough experience. They're ready for this." Madogai frowned, but he could say nothing in the face of such confidence. "Now then." The Sandaime coughed into his hand. All talking ceased. "Let us begin by asking the jonin for the new rookie genin whether or not they believe their students are ready to take the Chunin selection exams." He paused to take a puff of his pipe. "If any of you believe your students are ready, step forward." With a grin on her face and a pep in her step, Anko walked forward. After another second, Kakashi, turning a page of his book, also stepped forward. Kurenai and Asuma looked at each other. With a shrug and a helpless smile as though to say, "If you can't beat them, join them," Asuma stepped forward. Kurenai sighed, hesitated, and then also stepped forward. In an unprecedented move never before seen in Konoha's history, all four jonin instructors of new rookie genin had unanimously declared that their students would take part in the Chunin selection exams. Ten-tailed wolf, one of Naruto's favorite positions to be in, was buried between Akane's thighs. The feel of her strong leg muscles resting on either side of his head, the heady scent of her arousal filling his nose, and the cries she made as he kissed his way around her pussy were quite possibly the biggest turn-ons he had experienced in life. Only plunging himself hilt deep inside of her was more pleasurable. Their apartment was filled with cries of ecstasy as Naruto continued to dine on Akane's snatch, using both his mouth and tongue to please her. Thigh muscles twitched beneath his calloused fingers. Akane had wrapped around her legs completely around his head. It was only his hands that kept her from crushing his head like it was a grape. Naru. You must really enjoy the taste of my love nectar, Akane moaned out between her cries. When he looked up, it was to see that she was fondling her tits and pinching her nipples. He couldn't see her face, but he could imagine the kind of expression she was making, and just picturing it caused him to twitch. Of course I do, Naruto said, though his voice was muffled because he was kissing the folds of her beautiful pussy, which was the loveliest shade of pink. I love everything about you, but your taste is more addictive than a drug. Gagu to no OWW. Akane's back arched and her legs hold around his head increased in strength. Her clit was pulsing and twitching as he twisted his tongue around it. She was close. Her juices were flowing out of her, gushing forth now, and her body was growing tighter as though she was seconds away from losing control. While Naruto had said that she was more addictive than any drug, part of him truly believed his words, even though he knew that he had no basis to stand on. He'd never done drugs before. It wasn't like he had a frame of reference. All he knew was that Akane's taste had become addictive to him. It was something he could no longer live without. En Naruto. I'm close. Good, Naruto mumbled as he placed the finishing touches on Akane. With a gentleness that belied his actions, Naruto took her clit in his mouth. It was just a small nub, barely big enough to even fit in his mouth, but he still managed to gently nibble on it. The feel of his teeth lightly scraping against the small bundle of nerves was enough to tip her over the edge. Oh! Naruto almost ground his teeth together when Akane's legs tightened to such a degree that he had to reinforce his muscles with chakra to keep his head from being crushed. Akane really did have otherworldly strong legs. He almost thought he could hear his skull being cracked. All at once, without warning, Akane's legs suddenly loosened. Grimacing a bit as he shunted aside the slight pain to his noggin, Naruto looked up. Akane was lying before him, bereft of clothes. Her sweaty body glistened and was covered in a healthy pink flush. Seeing her body caked in sweat made Naruto lick his lips. Her stomach, chest, and legs were covered in a light sheen as though oiled. As he sat there on his thighs, Naruto knew that he would never get over this sight, the vision of his mate after an orgasm. She looked so tantalizing that he wanted to eat her all over again. If I didn't know any better. I'd say you've been practicing, Akane said as she got her second wind. Who would I practice with? Naruto grinned as he leaned over and ran his tongue along Akane's stomach. The muscles of her abs, slightly hidden behind a womanly softness, twitched under his tongue's ministrations. With me, of course. Naruto paused. Then he chuckled. Kissing his way up to her breast, he soon stuck out his tongue and created a trail of saliva between her tits. Akane moaned appreciatively as she reached out and buried her fingers into his hair. Soft, delicate, but strong, her fingers felt like heaven on his scalp as she ran her hands through his hair. That's true. If we consider sex with you training, then I've probably trained upwards of several decades now. He had long since lost count of how many times he and Akane had sex. However, it had to have reached the thousands by now. Are you ready? Naruto asked. Akane didn't answer with words, not at first. Instead, she grabbed his already hard shaft, standing straight up, and directed it between her legs. Naruto bit his lip when the tip of his head slipped inside of Akane's warm wetness. No matter how many times he felt it, the tightness of her walls as they enclosed around him was still unsurpassed by any other sensation he had experienced. How would you like it? Naruto asked. Fast. Hard. Akane's answer. Your wish is my command. Feeling his lips split into a grin, Naruto reared his hips back until just the head was still inside of her. He waited for 1 second. 2. Then he slammed his hips forward, burying himself inside of her. The sound of his hips smacking against Akane's pelvis resounded all around them, echoing. Oh, fuck yes. Naruto. Faster. Of course. I'm just getting warmed up. Naruto leaned down until their noses were touching, stared into her eyes, and smiled so large his teeth were showing. I'm going to pound your pussy so hard, you'll be numb by the time I'm through with you. Naruto didn't give her any time to reply. His mouth hampered hers as he began thrusting his hips, plowing into her as fast and hard as he could without chakra enhancement. Akane's muffled cries echoed inside of his mouth. Her arms went around his neck, and her legs locked around his lower back. Soon, the only sounds inside of the room were grunts, groans, muffled cries, and the wet pounding sounds as Naruto fucked Akane the way she had asked. Having sex was always a challenge for Naruto, who understood that Akane had an advantage over him in both terms of stamina and endurance. She simply lasted longer than him. It took willpower not to come before she did. Doing stuff other than simply churning her insides with his cock helped. After biting her lower lip, Naruto leaned back and placed a hand on Akane's bouncing chest. Her tits were both soft and firm, with just the right amount of sag. His fingers sank into her boob as though it was a marshmallow. Her other breast continued to shake and jiggle as he thrust his hips back and forth like a piston. Naruto watched her pink nipple, tempted to lean down and capture it in his mouth, but he had another idea. Grabbing Akane's legs, Naruto removed them from his back and pushed them up until her knees were pushing into her breasts. From this new position, he could see all of her. The way he was moving in and out of her, the sight of his shaft, wet with her juices, made it harder for him to control his desire to come, goddammit. This new position. Akane bared her fangs. It feels like your dick is pushing even deeper into me. With her back against the bed and Naruto standing over her, this new position put a lot of pressure on his actions, making it feel like he was pushing further into her than before. He could no longer see her breasts. Not all of them. Her knees were pressed against her boobs, which spilled out on either side. Let's see if we can't go even deeper, Naruto grunted as he reached out and once more found her clit, this time with his thumb. NNO. Akane's eyes flew wide open. It's too soon for me to come again. Naruto closed his eyes and clenched his teeth as Akane clamped down around him. Not yet. He didn't want to give in just yet. Pulling all the way out of her, Naruto grabbed Akane by the hips and flipped her over onto her side. Lying down behind her, Naruto grabbed her leg and raised it, spreading her crotch and granting him access to her once more. How are you going even deeper than before? Akane cried out as he plunged himself into her once more. I'm not. Not done yet. With his left hand holding up her leg, Naruto made a single one-handed hand seal with his right hand. Juketsu no Jutsu. Engorgement Jutsu. As Akane threw her head back, Naruto could almost imagine the way her eyes bulged as he suddenly grew a third larger. Now that he was thrusting into her like this, it became even harder to contain himself. Akane felt even tighter than before. She was grasping him, squeezing him, milking his very essence. He pressed himself fully against her, chest to back. He still had a hold of her leg, and he couldn't let that drop, so he could not play with her breasts. Even so, it didn't matter. When he looked at Akane's face, it was to see her eyes practically rolled into her head, mouth hanging open, and tongue lolling out. Hey, Akane. Akane blinked and turned her head, but she couldn't say anything because Naruto claimed her lips the moment she did. She didn't fight back. Despite being weakened by what he was doing, she pushed her tongue against his, twirling and hooking them together. It was a sloppy kiss. Their saliva dripped from their chins during the exchange, but neither of them much cared for that. However, this moment couldn't last. Naruto had already been reaching his limit. Akane. I can't hold on much longer. 2M close to. Can you hold on for 10 more seconds? Maybe. Naruto wasn't sure if he could, though he did his best. With his engorgement jutsu making him bigger than before, it was hard. He could feel everything bump and crevice of her insides, and it felt like his head was knocking on her womb. Naruto couldn't even count to 10, so when he finally lost it, there was no way of knowing whether or not he had succeeded. The world went white for a second. When he came to, he was lying on his back and Akane was on top, grinning down at him. He was flaccid now. Since he was no longer inside of her, their mixed juices flowed from her pussy, down his hips, and stained the bed sheets. "You're just full of surprises, aren't you?" Akane asked. "I try." Naruto smiled. "Where did you learn that jutsu?" "I made it. Based it off the Akamichi's expansion technique." Akane shook her head. Those poor Akamichis. What would they think if they learned that their jutsu had been turned into a perverted technique? I'm sure they already use it that way. It would be a waste not to. Perhaps. The two of them shared a chuckle, but the laughter eventually settled down and the smiles left. Akane placed her head on his chest. Naruto wrapped his arms around her. As he stared at the ceiling, he decided to broach an issue that had been on his mind for some time. "Hey, Akane. About those demons we fought in our last mission. I have been thinking about that myself, and I believe I have a theory on how they came to the elemental nations. You mentioned before that the most probable way for them to get here was stowing away on a ship or being summoned," Naruto said. "Right, and I believe they were summoned." Akane paused as she shifted against him, her breasts, nipples and all, pressing into the skin of his chest. "The elemental nations is a continent far removed from everything else. It's the reason your nation has been blessed with only civil wars among yourselves." Naruto hadn't actually known that, though it made sense. He knew the elemental nations wasn't the only continent out there. Traders from far-off lands did occasionally make it here, but this continent was so far away from everything else that few traders bothered making the trip, which took months according to Akane. Of course, it was thanks to those traders that technology like cars existed in the elemental nations, though only the richest of the rich could afford those. Most people still relied on horse-drawn carriages. It's true that there aren't enough travelers journeying to our continent for that many demons to have come this way. "You suspect someone summoned them?" "Either that Amachi guy or Orochimaru," Akane said. "I'm more inclined to believe it's Orochimaru's doing. I bet you anything he was hoping that after we killed Amachi, the demons would kill us. That Gyuren woman was probably there as an observer and not a helper. Orochimaru wanted to make sure we cleaned up his mess, and then planned to kill us so there'd be no trace of what happened. Given what little I know about the snake Sannin, that does sound like something he would do. Right?" Naruto understood what Akane was getting at. Orochimaru was a danger that couldn't be allowed to exist. Just knowing how to summon demons was bad enough, but with each summoning, the seals that kept demons out weakened. It might take 1 year, or it might take 100 years, but if this kept up, the seal would eventually break and the demons would be free to travel from the underworld to the elemental nations. "You think we should focus on finding him?" Naruto asked. "It's not like we can do that." Akane sighed. "We don't even have a lead to follow. All I know is that he needs to die. If we get the chance to kill him, we take it." "I understand. Good boy." Akane crawled up his body and kissed him. While their lips meshed together, Naruto reached down and grasped Akane's ass, kneading her cheeks together like old man Ichiraku kneaded ramen dough. Before things could get too heavy, someone knocked on their door. They parted reluctantly. Naruto clicked his tongue as he got off the bed, walked down the stairs, and over to the door. When he opened the door, it was to find Enko standing before him. "What do you want?" he asked bluntly, not quite in the mood. "What do I? Why the hell are you naked?" asked Enko. "Because I was having sex," Naruto said. "Got a problem with that?" "Do I have a problem?" "Yes, I have a fucking problem. You're naked. Put some damn clothes on." "Don't wanna," Naruto rebutted. He was just going to have sex again anyway, so there wasn't much point in putting on clothes only to remove them again. Damn it, brat. I have something important to tell you and Akane, so put some motherfucking clothes on right now. Do I have to? Yes, you fucking have to. Wear something. Naruto sighed. He was beginning to understand why Shikamaru always used the word troublesome when talking about women. Ten-tailed wolf, since the matter that Anko wanted to discuss with him and Akane was one that involved the entire team, they summoned Haku as well. Of course, Isaribi and Haku had been almost attached at the hip for the past 2 days, so she also ended up being with them. It hadn't even been a full week since they had returned from their mission to defeat the demon on Demon Island. While Naruto and Akane had spent most of that time embracing their desire for carnal pleasure, Haku had spent it with Isaribi, taking the girl shopping for new clothes, furniture, and other necessities. The only reason Naruto and Akane knew this was that Haku had sometimes requested their help, like when Isaribi got her bed and Haku couldn't put it together. It turned out that while Haku was a decent cook, he wasn't very handy at building stuff, and neither Naruto nor Akane planned on letting him hear the end of it. Consequently, Akane had been the one to answer the door that time. She, like when Naruto had answered the door for Anko, had also been naked. The results had been hilarious. At present, the group was sitting around a table at a small cafe, one of the places that accepted Naruto's presence. Akane was sipping on a latte. He wasn't sure what kind, but the scent of salted caramel wafted from the beverage. Similarly, Haku and Isaribi were also drinking lattes of some kind, different from the one that his mate had. Naruto smelled sea salt and green tea from them. He and Anko were boring. They had black coffee. So, what did you want to talk about? Akane asked as she set her cup back on the table. Her lips were rimmed with some cream, but she licked it off. Naruto wished he could have done that for her. Damn missed opportunities. I don't like beating around the bush, so I'm just gonna tell you, Anko said. The Chunin selection exams are coming up. They're taking place in Kirigakure this time, and I've nominated you 3 to take part in it. While neither Akane nor Naruto reacted with surprise, Haku choked on his drink and began coughing. Isaribi clapped him on the back. It took a while, but Haku eventually recovered at least enough to give Anko the most incredulous stare he could muster. Given that his eyes were bulging and his mouth looked practically unhinged, he appeared pretty damn astonished. You can't be serious. I am dead serious. But there's no way I could go there. Hell, most of Konoha would be unwelcome there. This is probably a trap to kill us. I doubt that, Anko said. But they hate bloodlines. That's not true, Naruto interrupted before Anko could answer. It's true that they used to hate bloodlines, but that's not the case anymore. Didn't I tell you about the civil war that happened in Kiri a few years ago? The Mizukage fought and lost against the bloodline clans that banded together to oppose him. The new Mizukage is a woman with a dual Kekii Genkai for lava and boil. Wait. Really? Haku blinked. Yeah. Didn't I tell you this already? You didn't. Oh. Well, now I have. Naruto grinned. So you've got nothing to worry about, Haku. They won't be killing anyone. Kirigakure can't afford to anyway, since it's likely that they're still rebuilding their forces. That they are hosting the Chunin exams is probably to give them a means of showcasing the current changes made to their village in order to bring in more customers. A hidden village's livelihood depended on their income. Everything cost money. In order to acquire that money, hidden villages hired out their ninja to other people and nations. The amount of money earned was dependent on the type of mission, ranked E through S. The tougher missions had a bigger payout, but the easier missions were more numerous. Kirigakure had been out of the game for a long time thanks to the previous Mizukage's actions, but now that Mei Terumi was in charge, they were doing what they could to get back on their feet. Hosting the Chunin selection exams was a bold move. However, if they could show off the talent of their ninja, the payoff could be huge. Also, the fact that they were hosting the exam sent everyone a message: we're still strong. Despite his words of reassurance, Haku didn't look convinced. Naruto guessed he couldn't blame him. Given what Haku had experienced in Kiri, the way his mother was killed by his own father, it really was no surprise that he wouldn't want to return. Bad memories. Bad blood. People did not get over things like that. And even if they did try something, it wouldn't matter, Akane added. If they do try something, then Naruto and I can just annihilate their entire village. The proclamation brought silence. Not even Anko seemed able to tell if Akane was joking or not. Of course, Akane was not joking, she was being completely serious. If the situation called for it, she and Naruto could wipe the entire village off the map. They had at least 4 jutsu that were made specifically for the purpose of destroying villages. You aren't being serious, are you? Asked Isaribi, her face paler than normal. Of course I am. Akane frowned at the girl, who looked away as though unable to maintain eye contact with the vixen's steady, Apollonian gaze. I'm more than capable of destroying a village by myself, as is Naruto. It wouldn't be that hard. Setting aside whether or not you two can wipe out an entire hidden village, which even I find hard to believe, Anko cut in, it doesn't change the fact that we'll be going to Kiri within the next week. It took 2 weeks to reach Kirigakure. They had to travel to a port town that would take them to the land of water, which was a nation composed of many islands, each of which had their own unique traditions. Kirigakure was located somewhere on those many islands. Because of how many islands there were, actually finding Kirigakure was difficult and required a shinobi specifically trained to find it escorting ships that wished to go there. The thick mist that clogged much of that area didn't help. I still don't like this, Haku muttered. Don't worry, Hakuchan. Naruto wrapped an arm around Haku's shoulder. We'll protect you. Believe it. Don't call me Haku. Wait. Haku blinked. Did you just say, believe it? Nope. I'm sure you said that just now. You're hearing things. Where's Sabuza? Asked Anko suddenly, cutting into Naruto's teasing of Haku. He pouted at the woman, but his adorable expression, complete with jutting lower lip, went ignored. How rude. He's out on a mission right now, Haku said. I was told that he left about a week before we came back. It must be a long mission, Anko said with a sigh. Do you miss him? Asked Akane. Of course not. I was just curious. That's right, Akane. Anko has us, Naruto said. You know that. You're right. Akane smacked her forehead. Silly me. I completely forgot. Who needs Sabuza when you have us? What the hell are you two getting at? Anko narrowed her eyes. Don't think you can tease me like this forever. If you say so, mistress. Think however you want, mistress. Arg. Akane and Naruto shared a grin as Anko grabbed her head, looking more than ready to tear her hair out. It really was too fun teasing this woman. She was so used to going on the offensive that she had no defensive capabilities. If he had to say what kind of flirt she was, he would have said that Anko was a woman who had placed all of her power into attack. In other words, she could dish it out, but she couldn't take it. Do they always do this? Isaribi asked Haku, leaning over as if hoping he and Akane wouldn't hear her. Pretty much, Haku sighed. That's because it's fun, Naruto said. Isaribi squeaked at being overheard. Anyway, did you need us for anything else? Asked Akane, stretching her arms above her head, her crop top stretching across her breasts and showing off her tight stomach. If not, then I'd like to head back home and have more sex. Is everything about sex with you? Anko asked bitingly. Only when I really want sex. You always want sex. Exactly. Anko twitched several times before rubbing her face. I should have expected that from you. Akane grinned, but Anko ignored it. Yes, there is something that I want from you and Naruto. Since we're traveling to Kiri within the next week, I'd like us to practice and train as much as possible before that happens. The Chunin exams are a huge thing, and while all of you are very powerful, I feel like our team is unbalanced. You mean you think I'm too weak, Haku said. I didn't say that. No, but you implied it. He sighed. However, I agree with you. Akane and Naruto are a lot stronger than I am. Then would you like us to help train Haku? Asked Naruto. Yes. We can do that, Akane said. Since we're a team. However. Baring her fangs at the pair, Akane reveled in their simultaneous gulp of fear. You'll also be training with us, mistress. I guess that's fair, Anko muttered. Good. Akane stood up. Then if we're done here, Naruto and I will see you both tomorrow. We have to prepare your training. Naruto also stood up and followed Akane as she walked off, but he was forced to stop when his mate ceased walking and turned just her head to look back at the trio still sitting at the table. Oh, and don't expect me to go easy on you, she added almost as an afterthought. Anko and Haku gulped again. Naruto was sure they were already beginning to regret asking for his and Akane's help. Sarutobi sat in his office. The paperwork was mostly complete, so he was taking a small break. He had actually started using clones to help get the work done faster, though there was a limit to how much he could do. While useful, the memory feedback from the clone could be overwhelming. That was why he only used clones for an hour before dispelling them. Pulling his pipe from a drawer in his desk, Sarutobi slowly packed it full of tobacco. He knew he should stop, given his age, but he also had decided that it was too late to stop because of his age. Besides, a man of many years like himself deserved to have some foibles, even if they were unhealthy. With a minor application of fire chakra, he lit the tobacco in his pipe, placed the end against his mouth, and slowly inhaled. His tobacco was flavored. Today, the scent and taste of cherry filled his nose and lungs. It was so relaxing. He had been busy these past few weeks. With the Chunin selection exams now happening in Kirigakure instead of Konoha, Sarutobi had been forced to write, read, review, and approve a slew of paperwork, the most important of which was informing all of the dignitaries who would have been attending in Konoha that the exams had changed venue. The daimyo and several important nobles had to be informed of what was happening. I wonder what that woman wants. Mei Terumi had come to him with the request that she be allowed to hold the Chunin exams, and she had made several powerful concessions for it. Those jutsu she had given him were no joke. What's more, she had promised to broker a trade agreement with Konoha, one that would give their nation exclusive rights to several rare herbs found only on certain islands in the Mizu no Kuni. He couldn't imagine her willingly give up so much just to host the exams. Yes, the Chunin exams were important, and hosting them sent a powerful message to everyone that Kiri was still strong, but she had been willing to give too much. It would have made him suspicious. However, he'd had several of his best interrogation shinobi with him during their meeting, including Ibiki and Inoichi Yamanaka, so he knew she was 100% serious. That didn't really make him feel better. If anything, it made him more suspicious. In either event, the Chunin exams would be taking place in Kiri this time, and Sarutobi would be finalizing the alliance between Konoha and Kirigakure then. Since Konoha was also allied with Suna, he'd sent a letter to the Kazekage, informing him about what was happening and inviting him to take part. This would hopefully settle some of the tension between Konoha and Suna that had cropped up recently. Looks like you're in deep thought, a voice said in his ears. Sarutobi did not let the person belonging to the voice know he was surprised, and instead he turned his head and smiled at the familiar figure crouching on his windowsill. Jiraiya, when will you begin using the door? Doors are for losers, Jiraiya commented as he adroitly dropped to the ground and walked into the room. His eyes first went to the portrait of Minato, the fourth Hokage, before studying the Hokage's office. It hasn't changed much since I was last here. Sarutobi shrugged. Were you expecting it to? Not really. After giving the office a once-over, Jiraiya gave Sarutobi his full attention as he pulled a scroll from his ninja pouch and held it aloft. All right. What's all this about, sensei? You mentioned in your letter that you had something important to tell me, something about my godson and the Kyuubi. Sarutobi had sent this letter to Jiraiya almost a month ago. That the man was only showing up now meant he'd either been out of contact potentially deep undercover or he'd been loafing around with some women and never looked at the contents until a few days ago. While he knew which of those options he wanted it to be, he was aware that it likely wasn't the one he was hoping for. That was why he said nothing on the subject. I did. Sit down, Jiraiya. There's a lot that I have to inform you of. Telling Jiraiya about everything he knew, about how Naruto had been trained from an early age by the Kyuubi, about how the Kyuubi was not a demon but a divine creature doing the work of the gods, and about the truth behind what happened the day Minato and Kushina had died, was trying. Watching Jiraiya as his face shifted through a myriad of expressions was interesting. By the end of it all, the Toad Sannin's face had settled on something resembling irritation. If I didn't know you any better, I would have said this was your idea of a bad joke, Jiraiya said at last. Believe me, this is no joke. Taking another puff of his pipe, Sarutobi watched the rings of smoke rise into the air. They drifted for about a meter up before dissipating. And are you sure the Kyuubi isn't lying to us? She could have brainwashed Naruto and is now using him. I contemplated that already but discarded it. Sarutobi flipped his pipe upside down and tapped the ash onto his ashtray. Akane is officially free from the seal. With nothing holding her back, there is no reason for her to remain by his side, but she still stays with him. What's more, she has taught Naruto a lot. He's become quite powerful. How powerful are we talking? Asked Jiraiya, wearing a frown that Sarutobi had only seen a few times before. The first was after finding out that Minato had died, and the second was when Orochimaru betrayed the village. I don't know, but he's certainly more powerful than the average Jonin. Sarutobi tapped on his viewing orb. I have been watching him and Akane train Anko and Haku. Jiraiya gained an expressive look that adequately signified his bemusement at those words. Orochimaru's old apprentice? Sarutobi nodded. The very same. Anko is a special Jonin now, and she's very talented. Naruto has been beating her in all of their spars, and it doesn't look like he's even trying. The reason I can't tell you how strong he is because there's no one around who can give him a good fight except for Akane herself. Remaining silent as Jiraiya absorbed all of this, Sarutobi took this moment to think about the situation with Akane. If her words were to be believed, and he had no reason to assume she was lying, then everything they knew about the bijou were wrong. It also meant their world was currently in trouble, though no one but he and Naruto knew that. I'm guessing you called me here because you need my help with those two, asked Jiraiya. What do you need from me? I do not need your help with those two, Sarutobi amended. I called you because those two are going to need your help. With your spy network, you should be capable of locating the other bijou. We'll also need your help in tracking down Orochimaru and the person who controlled Akane during her rampage of Konoha. I suppose I could do that, Jiraiya said. Sarutobi snorted. You say that as if you have a choice. Also, Naruto's team has been selected for the Chunin exams, Sarutobi finished, enjoying the way Jiraiya's eyes bulged like a frog's. They'll be heading to Kirigakure with the other Genin candidates and their Jonin. Leaning forward, Sarutobi pinned Jiraiya with a smirk. And I'd like you to accompany them. Ten-tailed wolf Haku's breathing was ragged and his heart pounded in his ears as he ran through the forest of Training Ground 10. He couldn't hear his pursuers, but he knew they were following him. One of them was at least. If he wasn't mistaken, the person tracking him right now was Akane. Naruto at least made some noise when moving through the forest, but his nine-tailed mate was completely silent. It was unnerving. Outside of his own ragged breath, all he could hear were the sounds of the forest, the chirping of birds, the creaking of cicadas, and the hissing of snakes. There was nothing else. Just knowing that someone was out there, but he couldn't hear them, was enough to make Haku's stomach cramp up. As someone trained by Zabuza to be a hunter ninja, Haku had unparalleled tracking skills. There wasn't a single person he couldn't track. Even the stealthiest of ninja made noise, gave a sense of presence, or, if nothing else, they could be tracked by the way the animals moved. Haku had tracked numerous missing ninja that way, and he was stealthy enough that he had terminated every single one of them before they had even noticed his presence. It bothered him now that the ninja sandal was on the other foot. Except that wasn't happening here. The animals weren't silent. They continued to make noise as though nothing was happening. There were also none of the noises that indicated someone was moving through the trees, no rustling of clothes, no snapping of twigs, not even the sound of ninja sandals striking bark. Nothing. What made the whole situation even worse was that he couldn't sense his tracker's presence. That made it all the more unnerving. Haku had long since stopped leaping through the trees, instead opting to run along the ground. He rushed past a large tree, nearly squealing when a hole suddenly appeared in the trunk, one that was no bigger than a thumbnail. Haku didn't know what kind of jutsu his opponent was using, but if it hit, he really would be finished. I suppose I should be lucky that she isn't trying to kill me. The dry thought penetrated his brain seconds before the ground in front of him suddenly caved in. He leapt over it, but then a powerful wind slammed into him from above, forcing him to the ground, where several spikes suddenly jutted up to spear him. Haku barely had enough time to create the necessary hand seals that would allow him to replace himself with a log. Kawarimi no Jutsu was a technique that allowed a ninja to replace themselves with an inanimate object, though some of the more talented ninja could replace themselves with other people. Haku was not that skilled at using the technique. However, as he replaced himself with a log, he swapped their positions and found himself standing on the branch of a tree. A branch that exploded seconds later. Gah! Haku leapt from the branch, or rather, was thrown from the branch. He managed to flip around and land on the trunk of another tree. Using chakra to stick in place, he looked around but saw nothing. Frowning, he leapt off the tree, which was a good thing because the tree exploded seconds later. As he landed on the ground, his adversary finally flew out from her hiding place, red hair whipping behind her like a blazing trail of flames. Haku barely had a second to prepare himself before she flew into him like a hurricane of fists and feet. Akane was an excellent fighter. Her fists blurred past him on all sides as he wove through them. Each strike was so powerful that it generated a gust of wind, which slammed into him from the side and threw him off balance. A strike on the left was avoided. However, the wind it created pushed him further than he'd intended. He barely managed to avoid the kick on his right. If it wasn't for his quick thinking, he'd have never been able to leap over it. Of course, it was only in hindsight that Haku realized this was a bad idea. Now that he was airborne, he had no way of avoiding Akane's next attack, and from the grin on her face as she drew her fist back, she knew that as well. The next thing Haku knew was Akane's fist traveling toward his face at high speeds. He couldn't actually feel the punch when it happened. It was like his body was experiencing so much shock that he couldn't feel the pain. All he knew was the wind rushing past him on all sides as he flew backward at speeds that made everything blur. However, that soon changed when his back slammed into and broke through a tree, and then another one and another one. His vision went white as he finally felt pain. It felt like his insides were being ground into powder, like his internal organs were being crushed. His back screamed as he broke through numerous trees, until, at last, he flew out of the forest, struck the training ground floor, and tumbled along the grassy field until he rolled to a stop. With his vision growing blurry, Haku looked around and spotted Akane racing toward him before everything went black. Ten-tailed wolf Enko growled as she and Naruto fought using nothing but taijutsu. A strike to the solar plexus was avoided when she redirected Naruto's hand to the left, but she couldn't dodge the kick to her shin. Pain exploded in her leg as she fell to the ground. However, Enko was a jonin. She turned her fall into a roll, coming back on her feet just in time to dodge the next series of attacks from Naruto. Unlike Haku, who was being trained in stealth combat because Kirigakure ninja were masters of assassination, Enko, who wouldn't be participating in the exams, was being pushed to the limits in hand-to-hand combat. Moving forward instead of backward, Enko tried to meet Naruto head-on. She tilted her head to avoid his fist, which soared at her so quickly she received a stinging pain as her cheek was cut from the wind pressure. It wasn't too painful, though. Ignoring the wound, Enko pulled her fist into her side and thrust it forward right through Naruto's face. What the dash? Enko didn't even have time to figure out what was happening before the Naruto that her hand had gone through disappeared and an intense burst of agony slammed into the underside of her chin. She felt her feet leaving the ground. A sense of weightlessness came over her, which seemed to last for a lifetime, though in truth it was only a few seconds. Gritting her teeth, Enko flipped around, landed on her feet, and skidded backwards. Her vision blurred. She bit her lip, the pain bringing her focus. She couldn't pass out. She couldn't pass out, damn it. Naruto was already rushing toward her. She raised her arm and blocked his kick. That was a mistake. She knew it was, but she had reacted on instinct. A loud thunderclap echoed from the impact of Naruto's leg hitting her forearm, and then Enko, screaming in pain, was tossed away with little effort. Naruto's attacks were impossibly strong. Enko flew through the air like a kunai thrown by Madogai at full strength. There was no telling how far she soared, though when she landed on the ground, Enko certainly felt it. A gasp escaped her mouth as her left shoulder was pulled from its socket. She tumbled along the ground, gouging out chunks of earth. As she gnashed her teeth together, Enko used her uninjured arm to push herself into the air by striking the ground on her next tumble. She landed on her feet, but then fell to a knee when the pain from her injuries overwhelmed her. Damn! That kid really is something. Grabbing her dislocated arm, Enko grunted as she popped it back into place. It hurt, but pain of this nature was easily ignored. Of more importance was Naruto. While she understood the reason for his power, it was still galling to have her but getting kicked all over the training ground by someone half her age. Seriously. How unfair could this be? Footsteps made Enko look up. Naruto walked out from between a set of trees, his infuriating grin making her blood boil. She wanted to deck him in the face. Actually, she wanted to sick her snakes on him, but it wasn't like she could. Even if they weren't fighting with just taijutsu, she doubted Naruto would let her attack him. Knowing she would only get one shot at this, Enko feigned injury, whimpering and holding her arm as though it was still dislocated. She didn't know if Naruto would be fooled or not. That said, he didn't seem to have noticed, and while he could be pretending not to notice, he could also have not noticed. In the end, she had no way of knowing. "Can you keep going?" asked Naruto. I don't think so." Enko muttered, doing her best to appear wounded and exhausted. "It looks like you win this round, brat." "Don't I win every round?" "You wish." Naruto walked up to her and offered a hand, which Enko took, though not for the purpose of getting his help. With a swift tug, she yanked him down to her and sent him flying with a powerful punch. Well, that was what she planned on having happen. What actually happened was Naruto suddenly disappeared, and the next thing Enko knew, her entire world went black when something powerful struck her in the temple. "Ten-tailed wolf, I can't believe I got kicked around by a brat," Enko muttered as she rubbed her bruised temple. It was more than just a splotchy black mark. The area around the outer edge was purple and got darker the closer to where Naruto's foot had met her. Had she not been a ninja, she'd likely have been concussed. Naruto, walking beside her, grinned. I don't know why you're so surprised. He chuckled at her glare. Walking on his other side, Akane conversed with Haku. You already know how powerful I am. The fact that I can beat you should come as no shock to you. It wasn't like this was any different from every other day they had trained for the last week. Akane and Naruto had been drilling everything they could into Anko and Haku more than Anko by using a trial by fire method. It basically consisted of Akane and Naruto fighting against Anko and Haku as though they were trying to kill them. Every day was a different live fire exercise. Sometimes Naruto would fight Haku, and other times Anko. They traded it up because it meant the two wouldn't grow comfortable by fighting just one person. Naruto had sparred with Anko a total of 6 times in the past week, and not one of those times had she ever beaten him. This was also when Naruto was fighting with a handicap. Since his jutsu were so powerful, they had opted not to let him use any. All battles were now fought with nothing but taijutsu. Of course, this had changed nothing. Anko and Haku still lost every single time. TCH, whatever. Anko looked away, but that only caused Naruto to chuckle even louder. The only reason you keep beating me is because you aren't fully human. Even if I was fully human, you would still lose, Naruto said assuredly. He had absolute confidence in himself. I gave myself a handicap, but if I was human, would have allowed myself to use my jutsu. Anko grimaced as she seemed to realize what he was getting at. She didn't say anything else, signifying that she had either conceded to his point or didn't feel like arguing anymore. You've improved a lot, Hakuchan, Akane said. You think so? Haku rubbed at a large, black and blue bruise on his face, an uncertain frown making his lips curl. It doesn't seem that way to me. That's because of my training method. Akane's chest swelled with pride. Whenever you spar with Naruto and I, we always fight at a level slightly higher than your own. We use just enough strength that it seems like you can win if you get lucky, but not enough that we completely overpower you. You haven't noticed it, but every spar we fight you with just a little bit more strength, which means your level has been increasing each time. That sort of training reminds me a bit of how Zabuza trained me, Haku admitted. I'm not surprised. It's a good training method. They were walking down a mostly deserted part of Konoha. There were a few people idling around, but at this time of day, most everyone was either working or eating. A fence to their left, painted a bright red, blocked the view of the canal, which they would be able to see from the bridge several meters in front of them. However, as they got closer to the bridge, Naruto noticed the lump sticking out of the wall. It was painted to look like the fence, but it stuck out so obviously that no one could miss it. He stopped walking, forcing the others to stop with him. Konohamaru, I hope you know that I can see you. The wall squirmed. He, so you spotted me. I expect nothing less from my greatest rival N-sensei. A large explosion of black smoke engulfed the area, expanding rapidly. Several coughs echoed from within the smoke. Naruto counted 3. When blackness dissipated, it was to find about what he had expected. Konohamaru was on his hands and knees alongside 2 other squirts that he didn't recognize. One was a small girl with orange pigtails and the other was a boy with a bowl-cut hairstyle and snot dripping from his nose. Who are these brats? Asked Anko. I don't know those 2, but the boy is called Konohamaru, Akane said. Naruto taught him some stuff a while back and now he shows up randomly and challenges Naruto to duels. I see. Can I help you 3? Naruto asked. Konohamaru leapt to his feet. You may have spotted me, but don't think I'll be done in so easily. Now let's battle for the title of Hokage. Sorry. No can do, Naruto said. Ah. Why not? Whined Konohamaru. Because I've got other things to do right now. He technically didn't, but Naruto wasn't in the mood to deal with Konohamaru. It wasn't like the kid was super annoying. However, Naruto didn't always have the patience to play around with the squirt. What? That's not cool. And I brought my friends with me, too. And who are your two friends? Asked Akane. A grin that stretched across his face appeared on Konohamaru. Hee hee. Ready, you two? Ready, the two other kids shouted. I'm Moegi, the sassiest kunoichi in class, the pigtailed girl said as she leapt to her feet and struck a pose that was, well, Naruto could only call her crouched posture interesting. And I'm Udon. I like math, said the boy beside Konohamaru. Like Moegi, he also took an unusual stance. However, unlike Moegi, this Udon kid's pose involved standing on one leg like a crane. And I'm the strongest ninja in the entire village. Konohamaru leapt between the two. I'm Konohamaru. And together. We make the Konohamaru Ninja Squad, the three shouted at the same time. No one spoke for the longest time, though whether this was from shock or something else, it was hard to say. Naruto absently watched a tumbleweed as it rolled by. When he looked at his companions, it was to find them in a state of uncertainty. Well, Akane was buffing her nails, but Anko and Haku were staring at the kids as though waiting for all three of them to sprout wings and an extra head. So. What is this, exactly? Asked Naruto. It's our introduction. Konohamaru's grin couldn't have been larger if he'd tried. Pretty cool, huh? Actually, it's kinda lame. What? Lame. The way Konohamaru appeared in that moment, as if he'd just been electrocuted by a powerful lightning jutsu, almost made Naruto burst out in laughter. Akane and Anko snickered. Haku, the most compassionate of the group, looked at the poor boy with a sympathetic expression. If you want to give yourself an introduction, then you should make it cooler, Naruto explained, endeavoring to teach the kid a thing or two about being awesome. First, instead of smoke, you should consider using fire or lightning. I'd go with fire. Lightning is harder to control. Instead of those poses, you should consider adopting a combat stance as well. It will make you look more dangerous. As Naruto stood with his index finger in the air, moving it in circles as he elucidated on certain points, the three kids, Konohamaru, Moegi, and Udon, sat down on the ground, pulled out a pencil and a notepad, and began scribbling on them. Naruto hoped this meant they were taking notes. Then again, he wasn't sure why they were that concerned with taking notes. Of course, if you really want to be a badass, the best way to do that is to beat the crap out of people. Let your fists do the talking. Let our fists do the talking. Okay. Got it. Konohamaru and his two friends finished taking their notes and stood up. Thank you, Naruto-sensei. We'll be sure to impress you with how awesome we are next time. You'll see. As the group ran off, Haku looked at Akane and asked, I'm not really sure what just happened. Don't worry about it. Akane smiled as something above them caught Naruto's eyes. He looked up to see a hawk flying down toward Anko. Those kids are just a couple of troublemakers who've taken a shine to Naruto. That's because Naruto's a troublemaker himself, Anko said as she extended her arm, allowing the hawk to land on it. There was a letter attached to its leg, which she took off. The hawk, finished with its job, flapped its wings and soared into the air once again. Akane, Haku, and Naruto surrounded Anko as she unfurled the note and read the contents. They watched as her eyes scanned the page. She didn't seem that surprised by whatever was written inside, though she did pause before burning the note with a fire jutsu. What did it say? Asked Akane. It says that we're to meet at the North Gate in half an hour, Anko informed everyone with a grin. We'll be leaving for Kirigakure. Ten-tailed wolf getting everything packed was easy enough. It helped that Akane and Naruto had most of their supplies in seals that were stored on a storage seal that had been drawn on Naruto's arm. The best way to keep one's stuff from getting stolen was to put it somewhere no one could take it, so adding a storage seal to his arm just seemed practical. Of course, they still wanted to present the image of normal genin, so they had their ninja pouches and everything else. It was just unlikely they would use the equipment inside. One of the greatest things about having your team all living under the same roof was they didn't need to have a meeting spot. Naruto and Akane wandered outside their apartment to find Haku already waiting. He was with Isaribi. The two of them were standing in front of the gate that led into the apartment complex. Their backs were facing him and his mate, which meant the pair couldn't see them. Isaribi was grilling the poor boy with questions, embarrassing ones at that. Do you have all your Senbon needles? Of course. What about kunai? Those are important ninja weapons, right? They are, and I have them. How about underwear? Did you bring a spare change of underwear? Of course I wait. What? With his mate wearing a grin that he was sure matched his own, he and Akane walked up to the pair. Haku was a blushing wreck. His face had turned so red Naruto wondered if his elemental affinity wasn't secretly fire. On the other hand, Isaribi seemed to finally have realized what she had said. Slowly, like a bonfire being lit, her face also began shifting from pale to crimson. What are you? His girlfriend or his mother? Asked Akane. Akane. Isaribi squeaked as she and Haku whirled around. And Naruto? How long have you two been there? Long enough to hear you asking Haku about his underwear, Naruto said with a grin. Please forget everything you just heard, Isaribi mumbled. Sorry, no can do, Naruto said. Akane nodded. We're storing this moment away for future teasing material. You two are awful, Haku mumbled as Isaribi, her embarrassment reaching its peak, looked at her sandal-clad feet and refused to say any more. She probably didn't want to say something that would give Akane even more ammunition. You know you love us, Akane said with a grin. The last person to arrive was Anko. Her usual trench coat fluttered around her ankles, which were protected by a pair of shin guards. Like always, she wasn't wearing a shirt but mesh under armor to cover her torso. Naruto had to shake his head. He knew that underneath her mesh armor and sexy demeanor, his sensei was still very much a virgin. It was funny how many people she had fooled with her attitude. It's good that you're all here, Anko said. All right, brats. Let's get a move on. We only have 15 minutes to be at the front gate. Yes, sensei, Haku said. Yes, mistress, Akane and Naruto said. Anko twitched. Fucking brats. As they began hopping from building to building, Naruto wondered about the oxymoron of calling Akane, a several thousand-year-old demon, a brat. Anko had been calling them that for a while. He wouldn't deny that he was a brat, but his mate certainly couldn't be placed in that category. If anything, Anko was the brat in that particular twosome. There was already a huge gathering of people at the north gate. As he, Akane, Anko, and Haku dropped from the roof and to the street, Naruto likened the massive crowd to a literal sea. From just a quick head count, Naruto guesstimated that there were at least 200 people present, maybe more. And at the head of this massive procession were two people. Naruto easily recognized Old Man Hokage. If the symbolic Hokage hat wasn't enough, then the Hokage robes and aging appearance certainly was. Standing at the Hokage's side was another man. His white hair, which traveled all the way down his back, was wild and reminiscent of a lion's mane. He wore a red vest over a green kimono shirt. His ninja pants were also green and tied around the calves with white tape. Unlike most ninja, he wore geta sandals, big wooden clogs that gave him an extra 3 centimeters of height. Similarly, his headband was not a Konoha headband. It instead had the kanji for oil on it. There was a summoning scroll on his back. For just a moment, his eyes met those of the man's. The man blinked several times, and then he grinned before saying something to the Hokage. What the heck was that about? I didn't expect to see Lord Jiraiya here, Anko muttered. Jiraiya? Of the Sannin? asked Haku. That's the one. Anko gestured to the white-haired man. That's Lord Jiraiya, one of the 3 Sannin who trained under Lord Hokage. He's one of the most powerful ninja in Konoha. Anyway, I'm heading over to where the other Jonin are. Try to stay out of trouble. Heh. Naruto looked back at the man as Anko disappeared into the crowd of ninja. So that's my godfather. Naruto wasn't sure what he'd expected his godfather to look like. He'd never seen any pictures of the man, though that might have been because he'd been too busy to really look. However he expected the man to appear, this somehow wasn't it. Yahoo, look who it is, a slightly obnoxious voice said from within the crowd. Seconds after the voice spoke up, 3 people emerged from the crowd. Kiba, Shino, and Hinata, who, though appearing no different from before, seemed a lot different in her bearing, especially compared to the other 2. Kiba, Shino, Hinata, Naruto greeted the 3 amicably enough. He had nothing against them. Have you 3 been training hard? You know it. Kiba grinned. We've been training our butts off. You do seem a bit stronger. Right? I have also gotten stronger, Naruto, Hinata said with quiet confidence. I'll show you and Akane how powerful I've become during the Chunin exams. Naruto paused for a moment as he let the words sink in. He knew that Hinata had a small crush on him, so he sort of understood why she'd talk to him like this, but it was vastly different from the Hinata he was used to. The words also confused him. He didn't know if she was saying this because she thought he liked strong women, which he did, but he only cared for Akane, or if there was another reason. I look forward to seeing how strong you've become, he said. It looks like we weren't the only ones chosen for this troublesome exam, another familiar voice said. Turning, everyone watched as 3 more people broke free from the crowd. 1, a young boy with a pineapple haircut and lazy eyes. Another, a cute blonde girl with blue eyes and a sleeveless blue shirt. The last, a large boy with pudgy cheeks that had swirls on them. They were Shikamaru, Ino, and Chuji. I'm surprised you 3 are also taking part in these exams, Naruto said as this generation's Ino Shikacho trio walked up to them. Rude. We're just as capable as you are, Ino said with a scowl. Why wouldn't we be in the Chunin exams? Because I figured it was too troublesome. Naruto shrugged. It is too troublesome, but our sensei nominated us, so we have no choice. Shikamaru, his face somehow even more haggard than usual. Asuma Sensei has also been training us really hard for this. If we didn't go, then all that damn work would be for nothing, which would be even more troublesome than if we did go. As always, Shikamaru's logic was the kind only someone with the genetics of a sloth could come up with. You 2 look like you're doing well, Chuji said to him and Akane in between eating. As always, the boy had a bag of chips in hand and was munching away. Who's the new girl? My name is Haku, the new girl greeted with a smile. Also, I'm a boy. What? Ino shrieked as she suddenly realized there was another person with Naruto and Akane. She stared at Haku with bulging eyes. No way are you a boy. You're even prettier than me. While the words somehow seemed to depress Haku, Naruto and Akane burst out laughing. Of course, this just made their teammates' already slumped shoulders sag even more, making it appear as though an entire world of weight was being dumped onto his shoulders. Before anything else could be said, the sound of a throat clearing echoed over the group, causing all of the ninja present to fall slowly silent. The person who had cleared their throat was none other than the Sandaime Hokage. He stood before the large assembly of ninja, a proud smile on his aging face. All of you are the best genin of your year, he began, the cream of the crop, if you will. That is why you have been selected to participate in this year's Chunin selection exam, which will take place in Kirigakure. However, before you travel to another nation's hidden village, I have a few words that I would like to share with all of you. Naruto focused on the Sandaime, who gazed at all those present with a calm, steady demeanor. The Chunin exam was established after the last great shinobi war as a means of replacing war. The hidden villages, realizing that our forces were being slowly depleted, decided that instead of proving our superiority through warfare and death, we would show our strength through friendly competition. Of course, while the Chunin exam is meant to establish bonds of trust among the shinobi nations, it is also a means of proving which village among us is the strongest. As the Sandame spoke, the many genin who were present, along with their jonin instructors, straightened their shoulders a little. It was an established fact that Konoha was considered one of the strongest villages right now. In terms of their economy, population, ninja forces, and mission success rate, they were stronger than all of the other villages. Even Kumo, known for being the most militarized hidden village, did not have their strength. That is why I want all of you to go forth and prove yourselves. The Sandame spread his arms wide as though to encompass all of them. The strength of a village's ninja is the strength of the village itself. Show everyone what Konoha is made of, show them what it means to embody the will of fire. Several large cheers went up, the north gate of Konoha, which had been closed to this point, opened, and the man known as Jiraiya finally stepped forth. He looked at the crowd. The youthful grin on his face contrasted with his old appearance. Because we're traveling in a caravan, everyone is going to be assigned to groups. These groups will also determine your sleeping arrangements for when we reach our first stopping point. Your Jonin senseis are going to have your assigned groups, so be sure to speak with them. We leave once everyone has been grouped together. Man, this sounds even more troublesome than I had realized, Shikamaru murmured as everyone began bustling to figure out what groups they were assigned to. Naruto didn't disagree. Unlike the other genin, those belonging to the rookies, namely Anko's, Kurenai's, and Asuma's genin, remained where they were. There was no point in trying to shove their way through that crowd. They stood on the outskirts and waited for their Jonin senseis to find them rather than the other way around. It was probably a good thing. Anko, Asuma, and Kurenai waited out of the crowd a few minutes after Jiraiya made the announcement, "You're all together," Kurenai said in surprise. "That's good. It saves us some time." Anko grinned. "It looks like all the rookies are being placed in a group. Now we just have to find Kakashi, Guy, and their genin." It turned out that finding Kakashi and Guy was pretty easy. Aside from Kakashi being a tall guy with spiky white hair that made him stand out, Mato Guy was a rather unique-looking individual. His green spandex and orange leg warmers were certainly fashion choices that no sane person would ever make. Not to mention his bowl hair cut and bushy eyebrows. It looked like someone had stuck caterpillars on his face. With them were 6 genin. 3 of them were easily recognizable. There was Sakura with her pink hair, Sasuke with his duck-butt hair, and Sai with his expressionless face. However, there were 3 others, one whom he and Akane recognized, but 2 that they didn't. One of those 2 looked like a carbon copy of Mato Guy, complete with bushy eyebrows, a bowl haircut, and green spandex with orange leg warmers. The other was a Hyuga. He had white eyes, hair that was long and brown, and wore a white button-up vest and green shorts. The person with them that he and Akane knew was Tenten. Akane and Naruto shouted at the same time. With little regard for personal space, the 2 sandwiched her between them, hugging the poor girl for all she was worth, while rubbing their cheeks against hers like a pair of overly affectionate cats. "Jaya!" Everyone jumped when Tenten shrieked. "What are you 2 doing? Get off of me! How could you be so cruel to us, Tenten?" asked Naruto. "I thought you loved us," Akane added. "I barely even know you 2. Now get off me." As Akane and Naruto continued to tease Tenten, the one known as Mato Guy walked up to the trio. His beaming grin came complete with sparkling teeth. "So, you 2 are Akane and Naruto?" Mato Guy flashed them another grin as he pointed at himself with a thumb. "I am Mato Guy, Konoha's beautiful green beast. I've heard many good things about you from Anko. Akane and Naruto let go of Tenten, who sighed in relief, though she squeaked when Akane pinched her butt cheeks. We are, Naruto said. I'm kind of shocked that you know us. You underestimate your fame, Kakashi said as he walked up to them. Lord Hokage has taken the time to inform a select few of us about you too. I smiled. That being said, it's nice to see you two are enjoying yourselves. It's good to see you too, Cyclops, Akane greeted. Cyclops? Kakashi seemed more amused than insulted by the nickname. Is everyone ready? Jiraiya called out from the front of their procession. You had better be because we're moving out. Everyone faced toward the front as, with very little fanfare, the large group of Konoha ninja slowly moved out of the gate. Their journey to Kirigakure had begun. Ten-tailed wolf because their group was so large, the caravan was unable to move very fast. They weren't leaping through the trees like ninja were wont to do. Instead, the group traveled the way a civilian would, walking along the designated dirt roads that would lead to their destination. Consequently, the port town they were traveling to was the same one that Mei Terumi had taken him to when he offered to help her fight against the former Mizukichi. It took 4 days to reach the port town by walking, provided they walk for 8 hours each day. Had they been traveling the way ninja would, it would have taken about 2 days. The caravan consisted of 5 groups. Each group consisted of 5 genin squads, which, when including the Jonin senseis, meant there were 20 people in total in each group, combining for a total of 100 squadrons. If they were going into battle, this would have been a decently sized task force. Naruto's group consisted of Anko's, Meidogai's, Kurenai's, Asuma's, and Kakashi's genin squads. They had been traveling for several hours. Conversation had been sparse. It was actually surprising, as Naruto had been expecting Sasuke or Sakura at least to make a sarcastic comment toward him and Akane, like they had done during the team selection back at the academy several months ago, but neither of them even looked in his direction. It seems Kakashi's kids have undergone a pretty major change, Akane said to Naruto, who nodded. I wonder what made them change so much, though you won't hear me complaining. So long as Sasuke, Sakura, and Sai didn't bother them, he didn't care what sort of transformation they had undergone. If they were better behaved, it meant he would be able to focus on stuff beside dealing with them. And yet, as they were walking along, the kid with the bowl cut, who Naruto learned was called Rock Lee, suddenly traveled forward until he was walking alongside Sakura. Excuse me, but you are Sakura, are you not? Sakura frowned and leaned slightly away. I am. Who are you? Yash. I am Rock Lee. The kid with the bowl cut pointed at himself and flashed Sakura a grin, the same one that Meidogai had given Naruto and Akane minutes before the start of this journey. And I would like to ask if you would go out with me. I promise to protect you with my life. Had Naruto been drinking something that would have been the perfect spit-take moment. He honestly couldn't see anyone liking Sakura, though that was mostly because of his previous experience with her. But even with whatever changes she had undergone, he still couldn't see the appeal. She wasn't hot like Akane. At most, she was cute, sort of like a child. Sorry, but I'm not interested, Sakura said bluntly. Rock Lee looked crushed. Naruto gazed at the cloud hanging over his slumped head, which looked ready to start sprinkling rain at any second. How emotive. Why not? Because I can protect myself. I don't need your help. That wasn't the answer that Naruto had been expecting, which was, because Sasuke-kyan will save me if I'm in danger. It looked like she and Sasuke really had changed. He wondered what Kakashi had done to make those two shape up like this. While Rock Lee slouched back into line, Tenten continued to look at him and Akane. Every time he caught her, she would look away, causing him to chuckle some more. It seems the flames of youth are strong in these kids, Meidogai said as he walked alongside Kakashi. Though if you ask me, my cute little student, Rock Lee, has a lot more youth than your own. That girl is awfully cold. Kakashi, who was reading something, flipped another page of his book. He didn't seem to be listening, but he stopped reading eventually and looked up to give Mato Guy a questioning look. His only visible eye stared at Guy before going back to his book. Were you saying something, Guy? Curse you and your hip ways, Kakashi. It seems some things never change, Asuma said as he took a deep puff of his cigarette. While Kurenai stared at the smoke in distaste, Enko grinned. You mean like your chain-smoking habit? I suppose. Asuma inhaled more smoke before blowing it all out. While the adults conversed, so, too, did the genin. Out of the corner of his eye, Naruto spotted Kurenai's and Asuma's squads getting together so they could whisper to each other. Of course, he could hear them just fine thanks to his hearing. Hey, is it just me, or is Sasuke-kun and forehead really different? Asked Ino. I don't notice any difference, Chuji said as he munched on a bag of chips. This kind was a different flavor than the stuff he'd been eating the previous hour. Naruto wondered how many bags the Akamichi went through in a day. Of course you wouldn't notice the difference. Ino rolled her eyes. However, for those of us who are observant, it's easy to see that those two have changed a lot. They do seem a bit more mature. Shino pushed his glasses up the bridge of nose. Not only has Sakura not picked a fight with you, Ino, but Sasuke has not tried to express his superiority to Naruto at all. Given how prideful Sasuke seemed the last time we all met, I expected him to at least pick a fight with Naruto. Maybe he realized that Naruto is a total alpha and not someone you mess with, Kiba said, shrugging. That's not it. Sasuke suddenly turned his head to look at the group walking slightly behind him. I just don't intend on picking a fight when there's no point. If Naruto and I fight during the Chunin exam, then it will be a different story. I'll show him how powerful I've grown since I started training under Kakashi. As though challenging him, Sasuke turned his head toward Naruto, and swirling around inside of his crimson irises was the black tomo of the Sharingan. It wasn't complete. He only had 2 tomo in his left eye and 1 in his right. A full Sharingan eye would have 3 in each. Still, it was a sign that he had grown more powerful. Naruto ignored him. Sasuke and the others were under a misconception about their power compared to his. He was sure most of them assumed the gap in power was small, that he was just a bit better than they were. He had no intention of disabusing them of this notion. Naruto looked toward the front of the procession, along the line of the caravan. His group was the youngest one present, which probably explained why they were in the middle of caravan. Should they come under attack, the ones who would face the brunt of it would be those on either end. This formation was essentially to protect the younger students. He didn't recognize any of the other genin. No surprise there. Naruto didn't have much to do with other genin squads. Even the people he was currently walking with he only knew because they had shared a class. The truth was that Naruto didn't really care about other people that much. Jiraiya was at the very front of the caravan, leading the group. There were 2 other ninja with him. One of them was Ibiki Marino, Enko's boss in the torture and interrogation department. The other was Inoichi Yamanaka, Ino's dad, also a member of INT. While Ibiki was bald and covered in scars, Inoichi's hair was a lot like his daughter's, or was it that his daughter had hair like his? Jiraiya was talking to the 2 interrogation specialists, though Naruto was too far away to hear anything. Are you thinking about talking to him? Asked Akane, noticing where he was looking. I don't know. Do you think I should? Jiraiya was his godfather, the man who had trained his dad, and it was said that he was as skilled in the art of sealing as an Uzumaki. Naruto had no idea if that was true or not. In truth, while some part of Naruto did want to speak to his godfather, another part didn't care. This man hadn't been around when Naruto needed him. Now that he didn't need Jiraiya, was there any point in talking to him at all? It was hard to say. As the journey continued, the sun began going down. Naruto looked at the sky, painted with a myriad of colors that made the surrounding forests look like they were on fire. Jiraiya had also noticed this. He turned around and cupped his hands to his mouth. "We're coming up on our first village. It's just a little bit further, and then you can all sleep on a soft futon." His words were met with a chorus of groans. Ten-tailed wolf, true to Jiraiya's word, about 1 hour later, the caravan of ninja arrived in a decently sized village. It was not nearly as large as Konoha. They had also arrived late at night, so few people wandered the street. Jiraiya led them to an inn that he had apparently booked half the rooms for in advance, and then told everyone that they would be sleeping in the same rooms as their teammates, which meant Naruto, Anko, Akane, and Haku were all sharing a room. Furthermore, the squads in their group all had rooms in the same hallway. This didn't sit well with Anko. "If you two sneak into my bed, so help me, I am going to murder you both," Anko threatened Akane and Naruto. "You say that, but whenever Naruto and I slip into bed with you, you are always so clingy. You hold us just like a babe holding her mother," Akane said as she and Naruto set up their futons side by side. This was an old-fashioned inn, so the rooms were basic 5 tatami mats large and possessed no bed. That was disappointing. Naruto loved testing out the springs on every bed he and Akane came across. "Two do not," Anko shouted. "How would you know? You're asleep." While Anko was flapping her gums, Naruto and Akane finished setting up their futons. They clapped their hands in unison. Turning their heads, they looked at each other. Naruto could see his grin, one that matched hers perfectly, reflected in his mate's eyes. "Since we're all sharing a room, we can't have sex," Akane said. "Indeed. It's a tragedy." Naruto nodded along. "Don't talk about having sex so easily," Anko shouted. Haku, who was setting his futon up as far from the duo as possible, kept his back to them. Naruto thought it was to hide the fact that he was blushing. "Anyway, since we can't have sex and still have plenty of energy, Akane and I are going to head out and explore the village," Naruto said. "And just where? Do you plan on going this late at night?" asked Anko. "There's nothing worth seeing." She paused, and then, slowly, her eyes grew wide and round. "Unless..." Naruto grinned at seeing Anko come to the correct conclusion. "Every village has its own gambling parlor." Anko seemed ready to tell them they couldn't go off on their own, and her mouth was even in the process of opening, but then she paused, her mouth closed, and an almost resigned expression crossed her face. "Just stay out of trouble," she said at last, having come to the obvious realization that even though she was their Jonin sensei, they weren't really subservient to her. Naruto thought it was about time. "We have no intention of getting into trouble," Akane said with a smile. "Who do you take us for?" asked Naruto, grinning. Anko just sighed. Finding a gambling parlor this late at night wasn't hard. Literally the only places still open were bars and casinos. After leaving their room, Naruto and Akane wandered the town, peeking into the various open bars to see if there was anything interesting going on. Most of the parlors seemed to already be knee-deep in their games, and Naruto was loath to interrupt them. However, they soon came upon a gambling parlor that would perfectly suit their needs. Smoke drifted along lazy currents inside of the gambling parlor, though this did nothing to cut off visibility. As he and Akane looked around, he saw that a game was already taking place. Several people sat on the tatami mat floor. One of them, the dealer, sat in the lazy slouch of a Yakuza thug. He had 2 six-sided dice and a bamboo cup. The game they were playing was called Chohan Bakuchi. It was a dice game in which the players placed a wager on whether the sum total of numbers showing on the 2 dice would be cho, even, or han, odd. Depending on the situation, the dealer would sometimes act as the house, collecting all losing bets. However, more often, the players would bet against each other, and the house would collect a set percentage of the winning bets. It looked like the players, 2 of them, were currently betting against each other. And one of them was losing. Badly. She sat cross-legged on the floor, her two blonde pigtails dangling from her head and trailing along the floor. Her brown eyes were narrowed in concentration as she stared at the cup currently hiding the dice. It was like she hoped that by glaring, she would be granted X-ray vision. A green haori sat on her shoulders. It did a decent job of covering her greenish-gray kimono, but nothing on this good, green earth could have possibly hidden the woman's chest, which was so massive Naruto figured they could be used as flotation devices. Behind the woman was another woman. Short black hair. Dark eyes. Her fair skin contrasted with the black kimono that wrapped around her body. It was looser than a standard kimono, and Naruto noticed the mesh under armor beneath it. She was probably a kunoichi, meaning that the woman she was with was also a kunoichi. Oddly enough, the dark-eyed woman, who looked like she was on the verge of a panic attack, was holding a pig in her arms. Currently, the big-breasted blonde woman was playing a game while the other lady watched. She was losing. Cho. The blonde shouted while her opponent shouted, Han. The dealer grinned as he lifted the cup to reveal that it was snake eyes. Han. The blonde cursed as the man she bet against laughed and dragged a large bundle of cash, lying in the center of the betting room, over to him. Don't think you've beaten me. The blonde woman scowled. This game is far from over. To emphasize her point, the woman grabbed a briefcase sitting by her friend, Aide, slammed it on the ground, and opened it to reveal even more cash. While the men looked on with grins, the other woman implored the blonde to stop. Lady Tsunade. I don't think we should do this, she said. That money was supposed to last us for a whole year. Put a sock in it, Shizun. It'll be okay, so long as I win all that money back. Don't worry. I've got a good feeling about this. If Naruto was to go by the expression on her face, that woman, Shizun, had heard those words plenty of times before. They had probably never gone the way that woman had planned. Naruto would bet his life that whenever this happened, those two would lose big time, and then be forced to skip town before the debt collectors could chase after them. Tsunade. Ha. Akane. Yes, that is definitely Tsunade Senju, Akane answered. I recognize that chakra signature anywhere. She's nowhere near as powerful as her grandfather, but the Senju blood runs strong through her veins. Naruto nodded as he strolled into the room, finally catching the attention of the bettors and dealer, along with the pair of Yakuza thugs behind him. While Tsunade and the fat, balding man she was playing against just stared, the dealer glared at him. Akane's footsteps echoed behind him. What's a brat like you doing in this establishment? Asked the dealer. What does any good-natured citizen do when they step into a gambling parlor? Naruto fired back as he sat down in between the fat man and the big-titted blonde. Obviously I'm here to try my hand. Also, if you haven't noticed the headband yet, please take a look now. I might be young, but ninja are adults in this world, so I can come in and gamble if I want. It was only now, after he had mentioned it, that everyone noticed the Konoha headband on his forehead. The dealer and fat man gaped. However, it was the reaction of Tsunade and Shizun that amused him and Akane the most. Tsunade had paled. Her entire face had gone white as a sheet, and she'd broken out into a cold sweat, though she mastered the expression quickly and switched to staring at him with suspicion lacing her eyes like venom. On the other hand, Shizun's reaction was the opposite, she seemed almost happy. Don't worry, slug princess, Naruto said with a smile. I'm not here to bring you back. I'm here to take your money. Those are some big words for a brat, Tsunade responded to his wit with a scowl. Think you can back them up? Shizun was now the pale one. Lady Tsunade, maybe we shouldn't dash, quiet Shizun. Don't snap at your aide like that. Naruto grinned. It's not her fault she speaks more sense than you. I really do think you should quit while you're ahead. Otherwise, I might steal you out of all your valuables. That does it. The bet is on now. Dealer. Tsunade barked at the man who'd been watching the exchange. Let's get this game started. Air. Right. The dealer scooped his dice into the cup and shook it back and forth. He then slammed it onto the ground, lid first, trapping the dice inside of it. I call Cho this time, Fat Baldy said. I've got Han, Tsunade said. The dealer looked at Naruto, who merely smiled back. My good sir, if possible, I would like to up my wager. Up your wager? The man gawked before his eyes narrowed. How so? I'm going to tell you exactly what the number the dice rolled on, Naruto began, and if I guess correctly, I'd like the house to add double to whatever these two wagered. Can you back up that wager? In response to the question, Naruto gestured to Akane, who barely withheld a chuckle as she unfurled a scroll and unsealed the contents with great theatrics. This was all part of their plan. Right now, Akane was playing as his game girl, the kind of gal who fawned over men that had won a lot of money. It made him seem arrogant and easy to take advantage of. After all, only idiots let an obvious gold digger hang off them. The contents of the scroll was about 1 million ryo. Naruto watched as the man's eyes bulged before narrowing, not even bothering to hide his grin from the dealer, which was honestly the perfect poker face. He knew well that the dice was rigged. He also knew that the man betting against Tsunade worked for the dealer, though the woman herself didn't seem to know that. However, Naruto had a secret weapon, one that not even flagrant cheating could possibly beat. All right, the dealer said, no longer concerned. Indeed, he seemed more eager than ever to get this started. But if you lose, then you're gonna have to throw in a little something extra. Naruto shrugged and pulled out another scroll. I have another scroll with the same amount of money. All right. Fine. What's your guess? One of them is going to be a 5, and the other is going to be 2. Maybe it was the confidence in which he made this statement, but all present save Akane paused at hearing him give what he believed were the correct numbers for the dice. The dealer, however, soon grinned. Naruto was sure the man had just assumed he'd won big and would be raking in the dough. That made the look on his face all the more priceless when he removed cup and revealed what number the dice had fallen on. 5 and 2. Among all of Naruto's talents, he would say that his most phenomenal, as well as the most stupid, was his ridiculous amount of luck at anything involving gambling. There's no way, the dealer mumbled before glaring at Naruto. You must be cheating. You mean like you're cheating by adding magnets into your dice so they always land how you want them to? Naruto asked in return, stunning the man to silence. Or do you mean cheating like how the guy Tsunade is up against is actually one of your henchmen? The temperature in the room seemed to drop several dozen degrees. A hostile intent to cause bodily harm came from the woman, Tsunade, who was staring back and forth between her opponent and the dealer with increasing awareness. It seemed she had finally realized that she'd been played for a fool. Her glare could have easily melted through steel. So. You thought you could play me, huh? She stood up. Now towering over everyone present, she cracked her knuckles several times. A large vein throbbed on her grinning forehead as the targets of her ire backed away. I hope you're both prepared to face the consequences of your actions. The response the dealer and his partner in crime had to her words was to let out an incongruous whimper. Ten-tailed wolf, ha ha ha. You know something? You're all right, brat. Tsunade bellowed as she, Shizune, the pig, Naruto, and Akane sat in the booth at a bar. The low lighting kept others from really seeing them. Not that it mattered. Tsunade was loud enough that all attention was being drawn to her. It was about 10 minutes after the incident in the gambling parlor. Naruto had won about 3 million ryo, and Tsunade had beaten the utter living crap out of the dealer and his partner in crime, which had put the woman in such a good mood that she offered to buy him and Akane drinks. Which was how they ended up in this position, with a woman who was in the process of getting drunker than a skunk and causing a huge ruckus. He felt sorry for Shizun. I'm glad you think so, Naruto said as he downed his sake in one go. You're quite the drinker for a kid, Tsunade observed. She had no idea that Naruto was incapable of getting drunk thanks to his metabolism. It runs in the blood, he said instead. Sure. I'll bet. Tsunade stared down at him through squinted eyes and pink cheeks. She was obviously drunk. He looked at Shizun, who appeared even more resigned than when they had been losing in the gambling parlor. You know. You look kinda familiar. Have we met before? I doubt it. And what about you? Tsunade asked Akane, who was quietly sipping her warm sake. I've never seen a woman with red eyes before. Except for the Uchiha. You aren't one of them, are you? Please do not liken me to those idiots, Akane said with a sharp, pointed tongue. Naruto winced. His mate didn't like even being mentioned in the same comment as the Uchiha clan. Okay. Tsunade raised her arms in surrender as she leaned back. I didn't mean to offend. So you do not like the Uchiha clan, huh? It is not that I dislike the Uchiha clan. Do you dislike the bugs you step on? Of course not. They simply aren't worth the effort it would take to dislike them. That's a pretty harsh thing to say. Tsunade chugged down another saucer of sake that Shizun had poured for her. The poor woman was diligent if nothing else, though he didn't know why she'd let her mistress drink so much when it was clear this bothered her. Not that I don't understand. I always felt the Uchiha clan was a bit too big for its britches. Naruto found it ironic that a Senju, the clan that founded Konoha and created two Hokages, would complain about another clan being too big for their britches. Of course, the Uzumakis had also founded a village, so who was he to say anything? As they continued to drink, Naruto spotted someone walking into the bar, a very familiar man with long white hair and a scroll on his back. Jiraiya looked around for a moment. Naruto would have wondered what the man was looking for, but then their eyes locked and it became clear that Jiraiya had been looking for him. Perhaps he had used those toads of his to track Naruto down. He didn't think the man had been following them from the beginning. He and Akane would have noticed. Jiraiya walked up to them with a large grin. I was wondering where you kids had gone off to. I was doing an inspection of the rooms, and only Enko and Haku were there. They said you ran off, so I. He paused when he saw the two other people who were with him. Tsunade. Jiraiya, Tsunade greeted him with a drunk frown. What the hell are you doing here? I could ask you the same thing, Jiraiya said as he made Naruto scoot over and slid into the booth. I never would have guessed that you'd be here at the same time as us. What are the odds of that happening? Us? The ninja who are traveling to Kirigakure for this year's Chunin selection exam. I had no idea that was happening now. While Jiraiya and Tsunade began talking, trading barbed snipes underneath what appeared at first glance to be a pleasant conversation, Naruto and Akane turned to look at Shizun and the pig in her lap. Your name is Shizun, right? Asked Naruto. Oh, yes, that's right, Shizun said, startled to suddenly become part of the conversation. She had been so quiet until now that she'd probably expected to remain in the background. How did you end up traveling around with Tsunade, if you don't mind my asking? I've been traveling with Lady Tsunade ever since I was a little girl, Shizun admitted. We left the village when I was very young. Then you've been to a lot of places? Akane asked, perking up. Well. We haven't been able to travel outside of the Hai no Kuni, Shizun said. Because we're still listed as Konoha ninja, we're not really allowed to travel to other nations. It probably doesn't help that Tsunade is listed in every hidden village's bingo book. Naruto added. Shizun twitched at the mentioning of the bingo book. No doubt she was surprised that someone so young would know about that, though she was also a skilled ninja and didn't show it beyond the twitch. Yes, that is correct, she agreed. However, the larger reason is because of our deal with Lord Hokage. Thanks to him, we are free to travel wherever we want, so long as we remain within the Hai no Kuni. If it weren't for this agreement, we would have been branded as missing ninja a long time ago. Ninja who did not live in their village, take missions, and contribute to the village's prosperity were branded as missing ninja and had hunter ninja sent after them. That Tsunade and Shizun did not have this happen to them was a testament to the Hokage's kindness. Another reason was probably because of Tsunade's abilities as a ninja. Tsunade Senju was another member of the Sannin, the three ninja who had been personally trained by the Sandaime Hokage. As an strength ninja, her powers were incomparable to those of the average jonin. What's more, she was known as the best medical ninja in the entire world, which also made her deadly in combat, since she knew the human body so well. Of course, she was known for another reason as well. Her strength. In purely physical terms, Tsunade was said to be the strongest of the three Sannin. Naruto had heard a rumor that she was capable of reducing mountains to rubble with just her fists. He didn't know how true that was, but even without having ever seen her in action, he knew that her strength was nothing to scoff at. Rumors like that weren't created from falsehoods. As Naruto and Akane spoke with Shizun, the conversation between Tsunade and Jiraiya wound to a quick and violent close. You really should come back to the village. I don't want to hear that from someone who left the village and spends all of his time sleeping around with whores. Now that's a harsh thing to say. It's all for my research. My research? You mean for those perverted novels you write? Ha! Don't make me laugh. Those books are complete trash. I don't know anyone who would ever read something like that. Considering those books net me around 2 million ryo a month, I know plenty of people who love them. And in any case, I've recently returned to the village. I plan on staying for a while. You should also consider coming back, and before you ask, the old man didn't put me up to it. Like I'd care even if he did. Naruto sighed as the two continued their back and forth. While Jiraiya seemed to be doing his best to keep things amicable, Tsunade was trying her hardest to be belligerent, though it was mostly just sliding off the man like water. Perhaps he didn't care as much because Tsunade was so damn drunk. In either event, Naruto was getting annoyed by this conversation. It was ruining his drinking. Jiraiya, could you excuse us? Naruto said. Akane and I would like to head back to our room. Suddenly being asked such a question, Jiraiya seemed entirely unsure of how to respond. But. I actually came all this way to talk to you. Did you? Naruto raised an eyebrow. And what do you want to talk to me about? Well, I heard a lot about you from old man Sarutobi, Jiraiya began to explain, so I wanted to speak with you. He told me about, trailing off as he looked at Akane, and then at Tsunade and Shizun. Naruto realized where he was going with this. Tomorrow, he said. What? Jiraiya asked. We'll talk tomorrow. Shrugging, Naruto glanced at Tsunade and Shizun, and then back at Jiraiya. Since you can't do so now, let's talk tomorrow. Well. Jiraiya looked like he was honestly struggling to find the words he wanted. However, he didn't seem to know the words he wanted, or maybe he simply couldn't speak them, and so, in the end, all he could do was allow the two to leave. Sure. Tomorrow. The man stepped out of the booth, allowing Naruto and Akane to remove themselves and head back to the inn. Ten-tailed wolf Jiraiya watched Akane and Naruto leave the bar, conflicted. He wanted to speak with the two of them. There were so many questions that he had. What's more, Naruto was his godson, so he needed to somehow bring up the idea of training him. The problem was that he didn't know how to do that, or if Naruto would even be interested. Given what he had heard from Sarutobi, there was a chance that his godson didn't even need his training. That was a sad thought. You seem awfully interested in those brats, Tsunade observed coolly as she drank more sake. Jiraiya sat back down in the booth and grinned as Shizun, ever the helpful young woman, poured him some sake as well. They're an interesting pair that has sparked the old man's interest. It's only natural that I would become invested in them. And I'm sure it has nothing to do with the blonde brat looking like a certain apprentice of yours. That might have something to do with it. Tsunade had left the village before Kushina had given birth, so she had no idea that Naruto was actually the son of that certain apprentice. And since she was technically not considered part of the village anymore, Jiraiya had no intention of telling her. So you really have returned to the village? For now. Jiraiya took a sip of his sake. I'll have to head out after a while to check up on my spy network, but I can afford to spend a few months in the village, though I'm also going to the Chunin exams, so I'll be in Kiri for a while. Kirigakure. Aren't they in a civil war? You probably haven't heard since you travel, so much news doesn't reach you, but the civil war ended several years ago. Kirigakure has a new Mizukage now named Mei Terumi. Apparently, she's got a dual elemental Kekkei Genkai. Huh. Interesting. Tsunade didn't seem all that interested despite her words. Jiraiya sighed. Anyway, I'm heading out early tomorrow. Jiraiya stood up. It was good seeing you, Tsunade. Shizun. Not gonna try to convince me to return to the village anymore. Jiraiya turned his back to Tsunade, but he didn't leave quite yet. Turning just his head, he looked at the woman that he had one-sidedly loved for several years. If I thought you could be convinced, I might keep trying, but I think we both know that nothing I say will be enough to make you return, he said, and then he left. He could feel Tsunade staring at his back. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Make sure to like, share and subscribe. This is Raven Sage signing off.